episode 157, Ironman 70.3 Super Frog with Jonathan Feddock. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Pursuit of the perfect race. Today I'm talking with returning guest Jonathan Feddock about his recent race at Ironman 70.3 Super Frog that took place on September 16th, 2018, where he had a good time of 4 hours, 31 minutes, 12 seconds. The temperature on race day was 64 and rose to 80 degrees, and it was also a wetsuit legal swim. Welcome back to the show, Jonathan. I look forward to hearing about your race at Super Frog.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So what was it like going from Norseman over in a different country to Super Frog over here?
I think I have something about this year just trying to do the most grueling and hardest races I can pick on my calendar. But honestly, it was nice. Super Frog is a very unique race, I think, on the Ironman circuit in that they pull no punches there, and you may look at the course profile and think it looks easy because there's very little elevation on the bike, zero elevation on the run. But then when you do it, it's probably one of the hardest 70.3s on the circuit. My wife or myself have literally raced it for the past 3 years. And I was originally signed up to do Ironman Texas earlier this year, but I lucked out and qualified for Kona in Arizona. So I actually deferred my registration, and I chose Super Frog because I like going there, and San Diego is a lot of fun to visit.
Right. And what a lot of people probably don't know about this course is the run is pretty much on sand for 11 and a half miles.
Yeah, probably. Well, I think maybe closer to 9 miles are on the sand, but they don't. There's parts of it where you can get into the hard pack, but then there's very clear parts of that run where you are running in unprocessed soft sand. Nobody's driven over it to make it nice and flat or compact for you, so that's a challenging run, and for a run that has zero elevation, it's the hardest one out there. And if you just look at my half marathon time from the other day, it'll tell you that's not an easy run.
Wow. I mean, honestly, come on now. You had a time of 1:35:57. That's cutting about 13 miles the whole way on sand.
Yeah, but my normal half marathon time for a half Ironman is usually about 1:20. So, I mean, that's about 14 minutes slow for me.
Man. So going into this race, what was your training like and recovery like coming off of Norseman going into this? Did you ramp up training a lot because you're also doing Kona, right?
I tried to not do that. I put in a lot of long, hard bikes, lots of hill work, a lot of strength type training for Norseman. So I really felt like I had that base, and I was really kind of strong to that regard. When I finished Norseman, the first week afterwards, I really just had fun, toured with the family in Norway and Sweden. I think I took 3 days off, and then I actually started riding my bike and doing some runs while I was in Norway. But most of it was more, hey, I wanted to ride my bike so I could see some of the country, or I wanted to run a little bit around the waterfront in Oslo. I mean, I like to use that as a form of sightseeing. So I didn't do anything crazy while I was there. And honestly, in the time between getting back from Norseman and Super Frog, I really tried to increase the frequency of my runs, but just do short stuff. So suddenly I started doing a lot of 3-mile runs, just make sure I ran each day. That way I get my legs back, but not overtax myself. And I kept most of my bike rides really an hour and a half, right around there, and just doing a little bit more high intensity work, not necessarily pushing the volume. And I did 3 4-hour bike rides in the past 8 weeks. Other than that, I really haven't done anything long. It was just more trying to get that variation of the types of workouts I wasn't doing leading up to Norseman.
Right. Now, are you still going off of cadence when you're running, or are you using heart rate still? What does this look like?
Cadence and feel.
Cadence and feel.
Like I said before, For me, I'm more efficient running at a cadence of 160, 165. That really, I just try to keep my legs going at that pace and, work on stride length. I've actually been trying to stretch a lot more, I used to have a really nice long stride back in college. I feel like it's gotten shorter and choppier now. So honestly, I've been working a lot more on my flexibility. I've probably made minor improvements.
So do you have like an ideal run form that you want to hold?
I don't know that I have an ideal run form. I guess I go more by feel when I run, and I know when I feel efficient and how things are feeling like it's flowing smoothly. So I guess I go more for that. I don't know. I guess I haven't really thought about it that much. If I feel comfortable, I'm running relaxed, and I have a stride rate of 160, 165, the day's going to go well when it comes to my running. So I kind of just look for that. And then the other thing I'll do when I enter these races is I've had to go back and kind of change. It used to be I'd start the run and I'd just force it if I didn't feel ready. And the first mile, I'd just make it fast to whatever time I thought. Now I feel like I really just try to ease into it for the first mile or two. And if it takes me 3 miles till I feel like my legs are underneath me, so be it. It's better to ease off early on and then get my stride back and then run strong than it is to force it and fall apart early.
Okay. Now, going into Super Frog, did you have an idea of what kind of nutrition you wanted to hit?
Last year I did Super Frog and I was 3rd overall. So I felt like I had a good handle on the course in general. And my goal this time really was to use it purely as a dry run for Kona. So with exception to the disc wheel, my bike was set up exactly how I planned for Kona. I kind of had my nutrition plans exactly as I do in Kona. I'm on the Big Sexy team, and we recently changed nutrition sponsors and switched over to Infinite. So I was using my wife, Shannon Flory, and I both kind of have tooled around and came up with our own concoctions or recipes through Infinite. I was actually using hers, which basically had about 350 calories per 20 ounces, and pushing the salt, had about 600 milligrams of salt with about 200 milligrams of potassium in it, a little bit of amino acids, a little bit of protein. My plan was purely liquid diet, hyper concentrated bottle and then sipping water to kind of help wash it down. That was my plan. Then the swim happened, and I think the swim kind of just completely derailed my whole day to a certain regard. So in Super Frog, you swim in basically the Pacific Ocean right next to the pier at Imperial Beach. This is a unique area. You are, I think, less than 4 miles from the Mexico border, but you have water coming in with a pretty decent velocity, so there's waves. They swim immediately next to the pier, so you have the pier causing a lot of turbulence, creating more waves. And this is very close to where the Tijuana River dumps into the Pacific Ocean. So you actually have a backflow of water going against the ocean current. Point is it's some of the biggest waves that you'll actually see in the San Diego area. Contrary to any other race, this race, Super Frog, was made by the Navy SEALs. These guys are tough as nails, as anybody knows. So they're not going to cancel that swim. And the only thing that I have seen them do is kind of like last year, if the waves look like they're bad or the current's going the wrong direction, then they'll have you go counterclockwise instead of clockwise. And instead of going into the waves immediately next to the pier, they'll start you, 200 yards up. But it's a 2-loop swim where you swim basically to the end of the pier, do a rectangle and come back in. You do about a 200-yard run on the beach, and then you head back out. So the waves were about 10 to 12 feet this year. And they start everybody, it's quasi-time trial. Basically, they have everybody line up according to your projected swim time. And then I think this year, every 5 seconds, they were sending 2 people into the water. I'm from Kentucky, so I'm not used to swimming giant waves. Obviously, I'm a pool swimmer here. And last year, I actually did very good on the swim. I swam 26 minutes and change. And I think the most important thing with Super Frog is if you're not familiar with swimming in waves, you need to get there early, maybe the day before, and practice just a little bit. But last year, one of the other members on the team, Connor Torrey, he was in the race, but he also works for Pulse Bicycles, I think, that's out there. So he's usually there doing tech support. Well, he gave me the tip last year when I asked him, I said, how do you get through the waves? And he said, well, swim towards it. When the wave comes, belly to sand. You need to be on the bottom, belly against the sand, kicking as hard as you can. As soon as you feel the wave pass, you feel that rush, pop up to the surface, keep swimming. So that was my game plan. I did it last year. It worked fine. This year, right before the swim start, I basically went out there and practiced for probably 20 minutes before the swim began. I was warmed up. So I lined up in the kind of right at the 25 to 30. Now I was probably in the close to the 25-minute guys for the swim. Everybody starts going in, and the waves were big this year. And I entered the water, thought I was in good position. First wave came, went to the bottom, belly to sand, doing what I had practiced. Popped up, gasping for air. Yeah, I missed the fact that there was a second wave coming like immediately behind the one that I could see. So as I popped up, I just got clobbered by this wave. I bet I swallowed a gallon of water. Took me under. I did say to myself, crap, I'm going to drown. There was more expletives when I was in the water at that point in time. But, I was underwater for, I don't know, it was probably only 15, 20 seconds, but it felt very long. And that was probably the first time I've ever been in a swim and actually thought I was in real danger. Then the fun part was the wave spits you up, but it took me all the way back to the beach. So I probably lost 2 or 3 minutes because of that wave. And then just psychologically, I literally did not want to go back out there. I was almost like, I'm done. There were a lot of people in that race who did, to my understanding, did go out there, get hit by the wave and say, forget it, I'm done, and walk back onto the beach. But I'm not one to quit. So it's like, I always tell myself in these races, if I think it's hard for everybody. So just went back out there, took a really big breath this time. And funny enough, literally I go belly to sand again. I felt the rush. I said, I'm going to wait. Yeah, sure enough, there was another rush right over it. So then I popped up. And the nice thing about that race is the waves are bad, but they're really only going to be bad. You probably only have to swim under about 3 or 4 of them if you do it right. And then without much time, you kind of get past it, and then you can swim the rest of the course. And then it's not that bad. But you got to do 2 loops, so that makes it a little bit more challenging. The other thing that was interesting this year was when we were swimming back into the beach. Usually you can catch a wave and makes that swim back in lightning quick. There was one heck of an undertow. And when you felt the wave crash, you rode it a little bit. And then all of a sudden, you started getting sucked back out. And you could feel, even though I'm swimming as hard as I can I'm going backwards. So, I think as a whole, the swim was a little more challenging. I was 31 minutes and change this year. But even still, I think when I jumped on the bike, I was 17th. So obviously, the swim was hard for everybody. And the guy that ended up winning the race, he was second last year. And, I think even his swim time was about 4 minutes slower than what he was last year. So, I think the swim was hard for everybody, but big lesson. You got to learn how to take the waves.
Being that you traveled from Kentucky all the way over there to California, how did you get your bike over there? Was it pretty much the same way that you got your bike over to Norway?
Yeah, I had one of those EVOC bike bags, so I've gotten pretty accustomed to traveling with it. This time around, I've had that Quintana Roo PR6 for 2 years. Over the summer, I got a Felt IA. That's a beast to take apart and put in the bike case compared to the Quintana Roo. So I had a little bit more work I had to do to travel with it. But, yeah, I just travel on the airplane with it. And I'll add that I hope the airlines don't hear this, but it is the most random an inconsistent thing whether they're going to bill you for that bike case or not. Most airlines, I typically fly American because that's one of the main hubs in Lexington. They're supposed to charge you $150 to fly with the bike case. I check in. They didn't even attempt. The guy just looked at it and said, oh, it's 150 pounds. Okay. He didn't even charge me for it. And then, of course, on the way back, the guy says, is this a bicycle? And I tried to smooth it over and say, well, it's bike parts. It's actually a lot of my clothes in that bag. So, well, I got to bill you for a bike. It bills me $150. So it's very inconsistent sometimes, the airlines, but it's frustrating when they want to charge you oversized fees for it.
Wow. So how are you going to get y'all's bikes to Kona?
I'm just going to ship it again or fly with it. The problem is, I like Tri-Bike Transport, and it makes it very convenient that, they'll bring your bike put together. But the drop-off date for me in Kentucky is September 21st. It's already passed. But there's actually not a Tri-Bike Transport hub here. I got to go north of Cincinnati. It's a 2-hour one-way drive for me to get there. So literally it's 8 hours of driving for me to drop my bike off with Tri-Bike Transport. And I had to drop it off 3 weeks before the race, and then I wouldn't have it for probably another 2 weeks after the race. So this way I'll just keep training on my bike. I'm still tweaking my fit just a little bit for Kona. This way I can keep working with it all the way up until the race. And even though it's a little pain in the neck to take it apart and put it in the bike case, I've gotten pretty efficient with it, and I can do it pretty quick.
Okay. Now, you just need like another bike, I guess. So you just need another felt so that we can continue tweaking it. Then just kind of mirror that bike to what you're doing right now, right?
That would be very nice. And I use the N+1 suggestion with my wife all the time. Personally, I don't want to spend that much money again. I'm good.
See, I went from Lexington straight over to San Diego. Should I get a rental car, Airbnb? What does this look like?
I actually got an Airbnb. I've been to San Diego several times, and actually even almost ended up moving there a little over a year ago for a job. So major cities, I'm actually very familiar with San Diego, and I like kind of staying up towards the La Jolla area. You get a little bit more feel for the culture. So I actually got an Airbnb and just got a shared bedroom that was about 4 blocks from the beach. And basically it was someone else's house. It was this couple from Mexico City. And they were living there. I just had a bedroom in their house. Cost me $100 a night. And it was fantastic.
Wow, that's pretty cheap. Was Shannon with you, or was it just you?
No, we kind of tossed around the idea, and she was thinking about doing the race all the way up until probably about a week or two before. And, I have a little bit more, I guess, I've been a little bit more fortunate in that because of Norseman, I got plenty of long rides in. I've been able to do all the long stuff. She kind of took a back seat a little bit while I was doing my training for Norseman. So she really wanted to get a little bit more time in, get some longer rides in. So she kind of stayed home, stayed with the kids. That's our other reason. Got children. Somebody's got to watch them, right?
Yeah, every now and then.
Yeah, we don't leave our kids alone. But, she stayed home with the kids, got a little bit more longer stuff in. I think she did a 20-miler and got a 5-hour ride in that week. So
nice.
So I went by myself.
Okay. Now, whenever you started to actually get to the village, how was your check-in experience here? Being that you've done it before, was it pretty much the same as last year? What is it like?
So Super Frog is on Imperial Beach. It's literally on the beach. So, like, if you were to go 10 feet this way, you're on the beach. If you stand right here, you're at the transition. But it's honestly pretty easy to find. You get off the interstate. It's one road called Palm Road. You stay on it, you go straight to where you need to be. The check-in, honestly, was very simple. They have a lot of volunteers that I think are all through the military there. So I checked in. It's probably like 2 hours before the check-in ended, and I didn't wait any time at all, kind of walked right through. I have that AWA status because I've paid a lot of money towards Ironman, but you didn't need it. It wasn't that busy. And I think also because it's a more challenging race, if you do most of the other 70.3s come close to selling out, or they do sell out. So you're 2,300, 2,400 athletes. Super Fog's usually in the like 1,000 to 1,200 range for their participants. So when you get there, I don't know, the check-in has never been a big ordeal for me, and it's kind of nice. You can kind of sail right through. Probably took 20 minutes tops.
That ain't bad.
I actually even illegally parked, meaning I parked in an area that wasn't that bad, but just, I didn't even pay. Just walked up, checked in, and walked out and was out of there in no time flat.
Wow. Now, whenever you think about your nutrition plan while you're there, were you enjoying the foods that are local there to San Diego, or did you have like a certain kind of meals that you want to get in before the race?
Well, in preparation for Kona, I've already been cleaning up my diet. There is a restaurant very close to there that I actually kind of enjoy, and it's called Big Kahuna's. If you've ever seen Pulp Fiction, they make reference to it with the Big Kahuna burger. Well, they have this like spicy aki chicken I like it a lot. It's like teriyaki chicken, but just spicy as all get out. And it's supposed to be Hawaiian anyways. I ate that after the race. But, before the race, I was just trying to eat lean, avoid a lot of high fiber foods, and kind of carb up a little bit. I didn't eat crazy or anything. So I've been there a lot, so I didn't feel the need that I needed to soak in a bunch of Mexican food. Actually, for dinner, I ran to the Trader Joe's and just got a cheese pizza.
A cheese pizza? Yeah. I thought you said you were cleaning up your nutrition.
It was organic.
Okay, organic pizza. Okay. So, whenever you actually try to get in bed the night before the race, what time are you trying to get in bed, or does it really matter to you?
I'll try to do at least 7-8 hours of sleep the night before. I'm used to about 4, or I'm probably used to about 5-6 hours, so 7's a huge improvement for me. And there, since it's 3 hours later than what I'm used to in Kentucky, it's not that hard for me to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night there, because that's 11 o'clock my time. And then getting up at 4:30 is actually a little bit, it's harder to stay in bed until 4:30 there for me. So going to bed a little earlier and getting up at 4:30 so I get my stuff. I had to check out of the Airbnb and then head over to the race. And I was staying about half an hour away by choice. So, I probably got about 7-8 hours of sleep that night.
Now, knowing that you're staying so far away from the actual race venue, did you have trouble finding parking the morning of or anything like that?
No. For the race, they actually have a local high school that's only about 4 blocks away. So I don't want everybody to make this race plan, but they charge you $10 to park at the high school. 3 years in a row, I've not had any problem finding a parking spot on the streets about a block or two away from the race. So I didn't even park at the high school, but I knew I had that as a backup. And literally every year we've gone there, I've been able to find a parking space within 2 blocks of the race.
Wow, that's like really not that heard of, because usually parking morning of the race is pretty hard for most races.
I think it has to do with the fact this is a beach, so there's probably a little bit more street parking around because of that. And then, too, the race director kind of hits in everybody's heads that you have to park at the high school. There's no other option. So I think a lot of people are doing that. That's why I said, I hope everybody doesn't hear this and take that plan. But in the past 3 years, I've never had a problem finding a parking space.
I wonder why there's no other option, quote unquote. I mean, we're all adults here.
I don't know.
So whenever you get to transition, what all are you doing in transition to make sure your bike is ready for the bike ride?
Again, I'm kind of a minimal guy when it comes to transition. I kind of like to have my bike ready before I ever bring it in. So, only thing I had to do was fill up the water, or bring the water bottles, put them in, fill up Andrew Lewis put me on to this guy called Shapeways or his company's called Shapeways, where he'll 3D print to make a felt bike receive this specialized drink mount. So the Aero drink that bladder that inserts in the frame. So I have that on my bike. So basically I just had to fill that up, put my Garmin on, and that was it. Put down a towel on the ground and throw my shoes, hat, and race belt out. That was all I had to do. So checking in the transition did not take me long at all.
Wow. Now you're putting in about 110 PSI on your wheels for this course. Is that high or low for you, or is that about normal?
That's normal for me if it's not raining or, just a regular type terrain course. So the bike course in Super Frog's overall very flat. What you're dealing with there is wind, which it's not terrible, probably maybe fluctuating 5 to 10 miles an hour. There's no gusts. So, 110 PSI would be normal for me on that type of a course.
Okay. So we already talked quite a bit about the swim, but what was your mindset going into this swim?
Keep within visible distance of the leaders. I was not trying to be the first guy out of the water, just wanted to get through the swim, not get pummeled by the waves, and then I wanted to be, when I got out, that I could at least see where the leaders were. That was it.
Okay. Now, being that this is a wetsuit swim, do you have a certain wetsuit you like to use that's either sleeved or sleeveless?
I have a sleeved wetsuit. I think if you have a properly fitting wetsuit, that is always going to be faster than a sleeveless. Even if it's hotter, it's still going to be faster than a sleeveless wetsuit. So I have an older Orca Predator wetsuit. I think it's probably like 5 or 6 years old. I like that one. That's just the one that I use.
Okay. Now, whenever you actually get to the start line, what was it like on the start line before you actually started your race?
So like I said, they line everybody up on the beach, kind of in a corral based on what your projected swim time was. The past years as I did it, you just kind of did like a rolling run through the start. It wasn't a mass start, but it wasn't this structured every 5 seconds somebody goes. It was just kind of as you hit the start, you just ran into the water. This year they actually put up starting gates, kind of like skis, like a slalom skier would start through, where you kind of had 2 poles and you walk through it, and they had 2 volunteers standing there holding their arm out and basically counted 5 seconds, let you go, close their arms, counted 5 seconds, let the next person go. The waves were big, and you could see it from the beach. So in past years, I've seen people go full tilt into that water. Even the guys that were like really strong swimmers, you could still tell there was some good hesitancy as they were kind of planning on going in with. There was a lot of running into the water with, I'm not sure when this wave's going to crash. We're just going to probably run a little bit farther than normal till we get a feel of what to do.
Wow. So whenever you get done with the swim band, we've already talked about that, you get to out of T1 or to get to T1. Gosh, I can't talk. You get to T1. Is there wetsuit strippers here? What is this like for you?
If there's wetsuit strippers, I didn't see them. You run straight through the beach. You kind of run through a beach access path, and then you hook a right on the sidewalk. Run the full length of transition, then enter. The transition at Super Frog is literally on a 2-lane road.
Really?
Where what they do is they just block off like 3 blocks. So it's narrow and it's really long. So you got kind of a little bit of a longish area to run.
So whenever you actually get all the way to your bike, which is a pretty long transition, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this took you almost 3 minutes here, and you get to your bike. How was this exchange from swim to bike for you? Was this pretty quick?
I thought it was pretty quick. I can get my wetsuit off pretty quickly. So, ran to my bike, stripped off the wetsuit. The nice thing was, even though it was a long transition, I had a great spot where I was probably only 20 feet, maybe, from the bike out. So once I grabbed my bike, I mean, it wasn't far. I had to run with the bike. It was just kind of short. So ran out, hopped on. I can do the flying mounts, and I can mount my shoes and have them rubber banded on. I personally think if it's a half or a full, I don't even mess with that stuff. I just put them on, strap them on tight. I'd almost rather run with my shoes on than just hop on start. So I took time to sit down, put my shoes on, jump on the bike.
Wow. Now, for this course, being that it's so flat, we know you're using a disc here and a deeper front wheel. How were the first few miles here on the bike ride? Did you have a certain data point you wanted to hit or a cadence number? Because this is a lot different than Norseman from a overall feeling, because this isn't nearly as hilly. Hey everybody, I just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast, and I just want to let you know that I've enjoyed having so many people on this show, and I couldn't really do it without your support. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and being a part of what I'm doing. If you would, take a few moments to leave me a review over on iTunes. It would help me out tremendously, and enjoy the show. Because this is a lot different than Norseman from a overall feeling, because this isn't nearly as hilly.
So I wanted to, normally for a half, I can hold about 270, 275 watts consistently. So that was sort of my goal. The problem I had was because I think I swallowed so much water, and it obviously a lot of salt intake. I was sick when I started that bike. I just had really bad indigestion. I was belching. I was kind of throwing up, and I wasn't even drinking or eating anything yet. So, I just started, and I said to myself, well, let's just kind of dial it down a little bit, ease into the bike, and hope my stomach comes back. So really just for the first, the bike is 4 loops. You literally just go up the Silver Strand Parkway towards Coronado. You go 7.5 miles, you turn around, you come back. And you just do that 4 times in a row. So the first loop, everybody was kind of spread out because, I think, like I said, I think I was 17th out of the water. So I was just trying to work on catching some of the guys individually, but there wasn't anybody to draft, and there wasn't anybody passing, so you weren't getting any drafting effect. So for the first loop, I was just trying to hold about 260, hoping my stomach would come back, and I was just drinking water. Didn't really come back. I kept kind of feeling sick the whole way, and as I mentioned, I kind of had that hyper-concentrated bottle that I had 2 20-ounce bottles that in total I had probably about 900 calories in them. And that was more trying to get the concentration of what I would use in Kona. And that was meant to cover me for at least 3 hours. And honestly, I think since it was so concentrated and I was not feeling good, that every time I tried to drink it, I was just getting more sick. So nutrition was a bit of a bang on that bike ride. I bet I was only averaging about 100 calories an hour.
Wow. Now, for Norseman, that's a completely different nutrition strategy.
Norseman, I knew I was going to be on the bike a lot longer, so I was trying to not, Norseman, I was using Cliff bars and Monk Breaker bars, and even had a candy bar and a Red Bull. This one, I was strategically trying to avoid the caffeine on the bike, because that's what I'll try to do in a full Ironman. Add the caffeine in on the run, and I'm trying to not carry all that stuff, because in Kona, if you have a candy bar, that stuff's just going to be melted goo by the time you get to it. And
that's why you just have to freeze it the night before, right?
It'll still be melted by 8 a.m.
So you're looking for 275 watts? Is that a certain
for a
percentage?
half?
Yeah, for the half. What percentage of your FTP is that?
Well, I think my FTP is about 330 right now. So, that's 80%.
Okay. What were you going to say before that?
I don't really test my FTP. I don't really kind of gauge my FTP. Like, I don't do 20-minute tests or anything like that. I will have a workout that Chris McDonald used to give me where you take an hour, 5 minutes easy, 15 minutes all out. Do it 3 times in a row.
God.
And basically whatever I can average for those 3 15-minute segments, that's what I would call my FTP. Or subtract a little bit from it. But usually I can always hold about 330, 340 for those 15-minute segments. So that's what I call my FTP. So that's probably a little elevated.
20 minutes, but you'd rather do 15 minutes 3 times.
That's about, so like I said, I'm all about trying to condense my workouts because I don't have that much time. You do that in 1 hour, and basically I can't, like, I'm laying on the floor afterwards. So that's my most efficient and effective 1 hour workout that I possibly have.
Wow. Now, on the bike ride, to hit 275, ideally, were you willing to hit a cadence number? Or
I usually try to stay 90 to 95.
Really? That's pretty high.
It was flat, so it wasn't that hard. If it's more of a hilly course like Norseman, I'll probably do more like an 80, 85, just because I think you're a little more efficient pushing power at that high of or at that cadence, right?
Right. Now, we know that you found the biggest possible cassette you could for Norseman, and I would assume you're not using that same cassette for this race, right?
I use an 1125.
Okay.
I would have gone with 1123, but I couldn't find it when I was packing my bike, so we just rode with 1125. And honestly, in that course, you probably only need 3 gears.
Right.
Because it's mostly flat. There's one section where you kind of go up an overpass and down. But even that, you probably only use 1 or 2 other gears. So,
wow. Now, on the bike course, I know that you're pretty far up in the rankings and pretty far up in the actual course itself. Did you see any flats on the bike course?
Yeah, there were some people. As I mentioned, Connor Torrey, who's a friend and on the Big Sexy team, he was doing the bike support this year. So I passed him, and, he was somebody, he was cheering for me every time I came by. First lap, obviously, he was just kind of standing there with his arms folded. Every single time I passed him again, he was changing somebody's flat.
That's what you get for not being busy.
Yeah.
Wow. So on the bike ride, were you having any GI issues or cramps at all?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just having mainly just cramps, belching, and vomiting.
Did that go away or subside any?
No. I like I said, I took it a little easy on the first lap. The second lap, it was kind of the same thing. So at the third one, I just started just trying to force myself to take nutrition down because I knew I wasn't going to survive the run if I didn't. And so I just tried to drink as much as I could, and I still didn't get in. My power ended up, I think my average was 262.
Wow.
So
now for the bike ride, for someone that hasn't done this bike course before, what would you tell them to be aware of if they're going to do this course next year?
Number one, it's 4 loops. So go in there and know that there's 4 of them. Sometimes I think people miss the fact that it's actually 4 loops of the same thing. Number 2, there's nothing very technical about the bike course other than the fact that because it's 4 loops, you're going to do 7 180-degree turns. Because each time you hit the end, you got to turn around and come back. At the beginning of the loop and the end of the, or I guess you do 6 180-degree turns because the first one you don't have them. Then at the end, you just go straight and you finish. Those 180-degree turns can get a little bit squirrely because it's a 2-lane road and you're probably going to hit a little traffic when you get to them. So I do think learning a little bit and at least practicing your 2-lane road turnaround is good because, I know how to do that without completely losing all my momentum. So, shift all the way to the outside of the lane, kind of cut close to the cone, drop your weight down as you come through, and then pedal as soon as you get out. I was watching a lot of other competitors where when they hit that turn, they were coming to a complete, absolute stop, practically putting their feet down to make that turn and go back out. So I think that'd be one simple thing. And then they only have one aid station. It's as you're coming right back into town. So there's nothing out on the highway. So if you need to kind of keep that in mind each time as you do your laps that, some courses, maybe there'd be more than one aid station, but in that one, you only have one. So you got to make sure if you're going to hit it, that you get it when you get there.
Right. Now, knowing that the wind is going to be so high here and you're using a disc and you only weigh about 168 pounds, did you feel like you were being overpowered by the wind with the disc, or did you feel pretty comfortable with that?
The wind was mostly kind of head on and maybe a 10-degree angle. And it's pretty constant there. Unlike Kona, where you're getting a constant 15, 20-mile-an-hour wind and all of a sudden 40-mile-an-hour crosswinds. In down there in Imperial Beach, it's pretty much the same wind pattern the whole way. So you can almost rely on it. Now, it'll vary from day to day, but during the course of the race, we had a little bit of a tailwind going back and then a little bit of a headwind coming in. So each time we did the loop, you kind of anticipated that was going to be the case. And I didn't feel at any point unsafe because I was pushing a disc.
Okay. Now, whenever you start getting towards the later portion of the bike ride, were you doing anything to start preparing for the run?
So I will ride kind of on the gas the whole time, and then when I probably have about 10 minutes to go, I'll start easing up. I'll usually try to get my cadence a little bit lower. I probably bike a little bit faster than what I run. As I mentioned, I have about a 90, probably is my average cadence for the bike. I'll slow it down to about 80, 85, because that's really what I'm going to be running at. And I'll usually switch and just be drinking water at that point to try to ease my stomach up.
Okay. Now, whenever you get to T2 here, what was this experience like for you?
Well, T2 hit. It was kind of nice. I think at that point I had moved up and I was 7th, I think. So, I rolled right into T2, hopped off. I'm usually excited to get to the run because that's my strongest part. And I had a friend of mine who came out to watch me. He's a physician in the Danville Hospital there. So he was waiting right out the back of T2, kind of waiting for me to start the run. So, just hopped off the bike, ran in, got my shoes on real quick, and just immediately started heading the other direction. I wasn't trying to move as fast as I could, just trying to kind of move average and not rush it. Honestly, I didn't feel bad starting the run. I kind of just immediately kind of felt all right, kind of into my normal stride. Last year, I made the mistake of when you start the run, you go about 100 yards and then you immediately turn right and go onto a beach access path and you're right onto the sand. They have cones set up for you to run about half a mile, probably about a 3/4 mile down the beach in the soft pack. Last year, I think I ran that whole segment in the soft pack, and it wasn't until I turned around and looked at this guy starting to pass me, he was all the way down by the water edge running in the hard pack sand. So this year, I immediately went down to the hard pack and just started running right by the water. I did the first little U-turn where basically the way the run goes is you hit sand, you go south, come off the beach, do a loop in this parking lot that probably adds up about half a mile. And you go back to the beach, you run the whole length of the beach, and you go north, and then you kick off the road again, do a little loop, and then you go back to the beach, start the next lap. They have timing mats at the opposite ends in those two different parking lots in the road so that your timing chips signify when you're off the beach. When you're on the beach, you kind of have to run the whole length to get to the next timing mat. And they have 2 aid stations, which are both immediately as you get off the beach at the north and the south end.
Wow. So you're running on sand, going back and forth on the sand pretty much.
Yep.
Wow. Mentally, this is about in the hottest part of the day, so there's really no sand out there. Or not sand. There's plenty of sand, but there's no shade.
Yes.
And you're feeling probably like crap for the first 2 miles because you didn't really get any nutrition in on the bike, and you're bloated and probably feeling a little woozy because you didn't get much nutrition in.
Well, what I did was since I told you I packed 2 bottles that were kind of high concentrated. So since I didn't really get them in, I just carried the second bottle with me once I started the run and was just drinking as much of that immediately before I hit the aid station, just chasing it with water. And I actually started to feel a little bit better when we were doing the run. Just my problem is I didn't feel like I had any of my gears. I felt flat. So I had about 2 gears on race day, and I started out in number 2, and I ended up backing down the first gear probably by the 3rd lap just because I just didn't have it that day.
Wow. So whenever you get towards the middle portion of the run, miles 5, 6, 7, and 8, how is this going for you?
Well, the nice thing about Super Frog is the fact that it's multiple laps. It's very spectator friendly, and literally your family or friends can just sit in the middle of the beach, in the middle of the course, you're going to pass by there basically 8 times because it's 4 loops on the run. And literally about every, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, you're going to be coming back through there. So, there's a lot of people on the beach. They kind of form a little bit of a pathway that you have to run through. So there's a lot of cheering. People kind of pick up on who you are because they have your names on your bibs. If you're wearing a familiar bike or tri-kit, they'll start cheering to you for that regard. So, it's easy to kind of stay in the game and keep going. So there wasn't any risk that I was going to walk or stop, but it's just I didn't have to go. I was trying to just maintain where I was at because I knew I was doing pretty well in my age group. And literally on the very last lap, probably within 3/4 of a mile from the finish, 2 guys in my age group passed me. And I saw them go by, and it's just like there was no counter. I had 1 speed at that point, so just maintain.
Now, using cadence and RPE here, is it different on the sand?
Yeah. So, and I think that's the best way to do the run in Super Frog. Do not look at your pace. If you look at my timing splits, I was jumping between like a 6 flat mile on the road and then like a 9 or a 10-minute mile on sand. And everybody varies that much. So if you're going by pace, you're going to kill yourself by trying to maintain that pace on the sand. So again, I was just trying to keep kind of a quick turnover on the sand. Don't bound. Don't try to push off your toes because the more you push into sand, the more your feet are going to sink and it's going to give way. So I think you almost have to adopt like a short, choppy stride to get through the soft pack. If you're running down by the water, it wasn't that bad. You can kind of just run steady. The other fun part about that is the waves are crashing, and as you get tired, you lose the ability to quickly jump to the right or to the left if the wave comes in. So there are a lot of times where I thought I was clear from where the waves were going to hit. And I'm sitting there running, and all of a sudden I'm running in 6 inches of water because the wave crashed, and I was too far out, but I was too tired to try to jump out of the way. So that's one of the things that makes that race a little unique and fun, I guess.
I don't know, like sand and water in my running shoes, that's not fun. I would definitely try to move out of the way.
So I'll share with you that last year I forgot socks.
Oh, really?
That was the most miserable thing I think I've ever experienced in a race.
Aside from the smiley face sunburn.
Oh, yeah. The socks, forgetting the socks last year, man, my feet were just raw by mile 8. Basically, the sand just got in there and just kept whittling away. And I literally had no flesh on the arches of my feet and the balls of my feet last year when I finished that race. So I definitely remember the socks this year, and I wore longer socks, like crew socks, just to get a little bit more protection so I didn't get sand inside the socks. And it worked fine. I mean, my shoes were still full of sand when I got done, but my feet weren't raw or blistered to death or anything like that.
Yeah. When I talked to Chris Cordova, she actually mentioned of getting these like little deflectors and putting them in like over her socks and then clipping them on her shoes so that way she didn't get rocks or gravel whenever she was doing Leadville.
I don't know that I think that's necessary there. I mean, I guess if you're going to spend a lot of time on them sand, then maybe that's a little helpful. But, if you look at all the other guys that are out there racing, everybody's just in normal running shoes. And I don't know. I don't know that I go and put extra gear on, but I definitely remember the socks. And I think some crew socks would be a lot better than the no-show ankles.
Okay. For you, what was the best part of the run aside from the finish line?
I really liked running next to the water there. Yes, you're on sand, but it's kind of hard packed, so it's not that bad. But kind of has that European feel like you see in the Tour de France, where everybody kind of collapses in and makes just this narrow alleyway for you to run through. You kind of get that effect, and because it's so many loops, you see everybody every lap. So, it's easy. Yeah, so Andrew mentioned how he saw me fall apart on the run. Well, yeah, he saw me 3 times. I think I had 1 lap done by the time he hit the run, but he saw me, I guess, 6 times then, because 3 different loops. You get a lot of repetitiveness there, and when you go through the aid stations remember you, because it's only 2 of them. So they see you pass through there 8, or each of them sees you pass through there 8 times, because each time you hit an aid station, you do that little loop, you're going to be back in 3 or 4 minutes, because it's not that long of a loop before you turn around and head back on the beach. So, I think it's a fun run course. It's hard as all get out though, but it's different, it's unique, and it's fun.
Wow. Now, for you, was there anything funny that you saw on the run course that might have been like a spectator holding a sign or dressed a certain way or anything like that?
There was a dude in the 20 to 24 age group who was doing it barefoot.
Really?
That, and I'll throw out, he beat me the other day.
Really?
He looked like he was probably running a 128, 129 pace, but there was a guy out there barefoot. Now, maybe he knows something I don't, because he obviously doesn't have to deal with the sand and the shoe issue that way. But I have collapsed my arches with all the running I've done in my lifetime, so I can do no shoes or on the sand. There's absolutely, if I ran 1 mile on the road without shoes on, my feet I couldn't walk afterwards. So, but yeah, that one definitely raised my eyebrows when he came by, and I took a little bit of a hit to the pride on that one. I saw that guy come around me barefoot.
So you have to have some kind of arch support for your arches then?
Yes, I have a plethora of different orthotics that have different purposes. Every pair of my shoes, even my work shoes, have arch supports now.
Wow. So how do you go about finding the right arch supports for you?
Well, it was a bit of a work in progress. I've seen a lot of different physical therapists, and there's a foot specialist here in town. My wife actually came across an orthopedic physical therapist who's in Louisville, which is an hour away from here. And we'll just say she really understands feet. So I have some custom orthotics that she's made for me. And then I'm a fan of the Sole, S-O-L-E footbeds. They have a pair that's literally meant for dress shoes. So I have that in I have one pair that I just flip between my dress shoes. And then I'm one of those guys that Cole Haan, when they were bought out by Nike, they have some dress shoes that have running soles for them. So my dress shoes all look a little bit funky because they're all running shoes, really. But that's the only thing I'll wear at work. So there's no fancy, very pretty looking loafers in my shoe collection anymore. It's all kind of functional,
okay,
practical minded.
Because I know my feet are like flat. Like God made me to touch all of the earth underneath me. So I touch it all. And I have to wear some kind of support in my shoes as well. So it's kind of get a bit of an insight on that.
And I also have to vary some of my running and my workouts now because of that. There's been lots of times where I've been averaging 70, 80 miles a week. Not necessarily triathlon training, but I really used to enjoy doing that, believe it or not, when I was in my 20s. I can't really run over 40 or 50 miles a week anymore, so I don't even try. Because if I do, my ankles are going to be so flared up that the running will be over for about a month or so. So I just try to keep right at about the 30, 35 miles per week mark. And everything has arch supports, and I can do a lot of strength work, but if you've ever seen my calves, strength is not really the problem down there. It's that the tendons are just stretched out to their max, and that's what I get for, running as hard and as long as I did for my teenage years and 20s through college and whatnot.
Okay. Now, to kind of go back to the race here, knowing that you're struggling a little bit and you only had one gear and you were out there for 14 to 15 minutes longer than you wanted to be, towards mile 11 and 12, were you mentally in a rough spot?
Mentally, there was no question would I be able to finish the race or not. Mentally, I was frustrated because guys that in my mind I should be able to beat, they were starting to pass me. But then I also just kind of told myself, look, this isn't I came here for fun. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good time. The real goal right now is Kona. So, actually the real goal was Norseman a month and a half ago. Kona's kind of icing on the cake. So, I was there for fun. I was enjoying myself. My friend that I mentioned was a physician in the military. I hadn't seen him in about 3 years. I was going to go to his house after the race. So, I was just kind of looking forward to that. And, it took a bit to hit it to the pride, but it's fine because I didn't really taper for this. I used it more as kind of last minute prep for Kona because I'm burned out with the long 5-hour rides anyways. So, I guess mentally I was there, but mentally I also knew it's not like I'm taking it easy. I'm giving it all that I got. And so just keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. That was, I guess, my main goal.
Okay. Now, whenever you get to the finish shoot, what is this experience like for you?
It was actually fine. And in one regard, it was kind of neat. So the guy that passed me, that was the last, I mentioned 2 guys in my age group passed me in the last 3/4 of a mile. I didn't recognize him when he came by, but the numbers are on the calf, so you can see what age group they're in. As soon as I crossed the finish line, he was actually waiting for me and came up to me and said, I don't know if you remember me, but you and we were talking last year at the award ceremony at Arizona. And actually, I did remember him. He was asking me, since I had just qualified for Kona, what does it take to qualify for Kona? We sat at the little table during kind of like the post-race breakfast, and I shared with him kind of my training strategy and how you got to change things on the bike. And he was like, I did everything you said, and man, I just had the best run of my life. And was like really excited. So in a way, I was actually kind of happy that he passed me and that he actually took the time to come back and tell me that, some tips I gave him actually really panned out. I'm not a coach. I don't want to be a coach. I got plenty enough work already, but it was kind of neat. And I guess that's probably what everybody who does do coaching, gets the experience that, when you give some advice and it works out. So that was actually probably really neat for me in the post-race finisher shoot. I guess the second thing about the finisher shoot was, I was pretty hungry, but I didn't feel so great. So I kind of was looking for something to eat, but they had pizza and pasta there, and I didn't really want to eat that. What sounded good was across the street was a convenience store. So I went and I got an ice cream sandwich and what else did I drink? I think a root beer.
Wow.
That was it.
So the tips that you gave to this other guy at Arizona to help him have a good race, what kind of tips were these?
As someone who kind of grew up and entered the sport as a pure runner, the biggest thing I had to learn and actually accept was that I think one of the keys to actually having a good run in any of these races is not practicing running, it's practicing biking. And which is counterintuitive. And I think a lot of people will do a half Ironman or do a full Ironman, and then they find out that, man, my run wasn't what I thought it would be. Let me run more. Well, really what I suggested to him and I told him was that, number one, your goal should not necessarily be to be the best run trained you are, but rather to be in really good bike fitness so that when you get off the bike, you're fresh. You're going to run so much better if you're fresh than if you're in the best run shape ever, but your legs are trashed by the time the run begins. The second thing that I told him was that, you really got to learn how to regulate your power output from the bike. And the goal is to be consistent, not biking it like a pure cyclist where you're attacking the hills and getting out of the saddle quite a bit. So I talked to him a little bit more about strategy. And then I shared with him some of the hours or some of the workouts that I do, because he has similar hours, I think, to what I have. And then he had some, can't necessarily be training 20, 25 hours a week because he's got a job. So, I think I told him about my 1 hour of pain, 15-minute ordeal times 3. And he just said he's been biking a ton and focusing so much more on that. And yeah, it paid off because he had a great run.
Wow. What about from a nutrition standpoint? Did you tell me anything about that?
Well, I don't think we really went all into nutrition other than at the time I just shared with him what products I was using, and I still am to a certain regard. I was just doing the F2C glycodurance, and there's actually a local company that was started up by a friend of mine. They have something called SWORD, SWORD, which is Sweat Oral Rehydration Drink.
Wow, I've actually heard of somebody using that, Camille Herron.
Yeah,
like episode 9, I think it was.
So the guy who literally came up with that lives about 3/4 of a mile from his house, and I was one of his test pigs when he was coming up with it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you feel like you were?
Did you say how unprepared?
How well prepared?
Oh, sorry. Okay. I think I was prepared. I just had some nutrition issues, and then I think, in all honesty, I'm a little beat down right now, partially from probably still slow recovery from Norseman. I think in a large part it's been my job. I've been a lot more busy as of late. We've been doing 12-hour days. I've been at work since 6:45 this morning. It's still 6:15. I probably have another 30 minutes till I'll be able to leave. And so just work-wise, I've been really swamped. And then, I've been trying to fit in all my workouts still, which means I'm getting up earlier, staying up a little later. So we're now 2.5 weeks from Kona. And let's just say after Super Frog happened, I have jumped into hyperdrive as far as my taper goes. With exception to, I did a long run last night and another one this morning to kind of get me a little bit more marathon ready. But I am cruising for the rest of this time frame, and I do not have any major workouts or big stuff I have planned. It's really just taper down and get fresh.
What did your 2 runs look like?
I have my own little pre-marathon routine that I like to do where I do an 11-mile, a 10-mile, and a 9-mile. And I do them very close together. So I did 11 last night, 10 this morning. We'll see. Maybe I'll do the 9 tonight. I may just call it that because the first 2, they went fine. So I think I'm ready.
So what makes you kind of do this broken up like that?
I think it doesn't put as much stress. I feel like I recover faster than I would if I did a straight 20-miler. You get literally the whole 26 or 27 miles in a 24-hour period. And I did it through my 20s, and it worked fine. And, I'd usually substitute it for my long run kind of in the last couple of weeks before the race. And I think the other thing it does is tests your mental commitment, because it's very hard to decide to get back out and do those next runs when they're only 8 or 9 hours apart. And I think it actually helps you a little bit more in terms of building that late race stamina where, the sequence I'll do them is the first run is maybe 10, 15 seconds per mile faster than goal pace. Second one is right on goal pace, maybe a little under, just in terms of running it. And then usually the third one I'll put in just a few intervals. The fact that I'm getting ready for Kona, again, I don't know that I'm going to do the run tonight just because I don't necessarily feel like I need it right now. Or maybe I'll just cut it short to like 5 miles. But
okay. Now, looking back on it, if you could change anything about your race and how it went, what would you change?
I don't know that I'd really change anything, other than recognizing that the wave coming about in the first time I entered the water, there's a second one right behind it. But it's hard to judge that because you're in the water swimming and you're looking up like you normally would for a sight. And if the wave's 10 feet tall, you can't see what's on the other side of it. I did pay attention on the beach before the race. And the thing was, it was inconsistent. It wasn't that every wave was coming in with two in sequence. It was, you have several singles, and then maybe every now and then there'd be a doublet lined up. I just happened to hit that doublet. So, and like I said, I didn't necessarily look at Super Frog as it was going to be my A race. I was already signed up for it because I deferred my entry back in March. I was able to use Sky Miles to fly out there, so I honestly didn't spend anything on my plane ticket. The Airbnb I got was cheap. I just went out there to kind of get away for a weekend, have fun, and I still had a lot of fun in that race. So, I don't have any regrets about that. I still had a good time there.
Nice. So you're doing Kona in 2.5 weeks. Have you already started looking at what races you're doing next year?
I signed up for the Chattanooga 70.3 in May. That's 4 hours from my house. I signed up for that one early because if I didn't, it sells out. Beyond that, no, not a whole lot. Shannon was very excited after I did Norseman, and we've kind of talked about, will I do another extreme triathlon next year? Maybe like there's one in Sweden. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not ready to commit to another one just yet, but maybe one of those. These swim run events look kind of neat, and Shannon and I had the idea of maybe we do it as a team together. So, we thought about that, but I haven't really made much of a calendar yet. I'd like to go to Nice for the 70.3 Worlds. I actually intend to probably take a little bit of a step back from the full Ironman next year, unless it ends up being one of these extreme tries and Shannon talks me into it. But honestly, the training for the long stuff is just increasingly getting hard with my schedule and my kids and family demands. And we've talked before how I do not want to give up my weekends so that I can train and just be the dad who's always gone. So, I really value my time with my kids and at home. So I think I'll probably just kind of stick around with some of the half Ironmans next year.
Okay.
Or half distances.
That makes sense. Now, going into Kona here in 2.5 weeks, what does your travel itinerary look like?
We're going to fly in on Tuesday, and then we'll fly back the day after the race.
Wow, so you're not going to be there very long.
No, and we've done it lots of different ways. Between Shannon and I, this will be my third Kona. It will be her third Kona. So we have, we've had a very nice run where at least out of the 6 years, the past 6 years, we've been there 5 of them. We've gone for a week and a half to 2 weeks at a time. And this year we're going to keep the kids here at home. They're going to stay with their grandparents, and we just didn't want to make it a really big, long solo vacation away from the kids. So we're just going to go on Tuesday and come back the day after the race. Plus, we just got back from Norway, so we did 2 weeks over there. I got to keep working to pay for all this stuff, so that'll minimize the off time.
Wow. So to kind of transition a little bit to wrap up here, you had some exciting news with Ironcology going on.
Right. So I started my own fundraising organization, Ironcology, back in 2014. And back then it was really just a fundraising platform. And because I didn't really have the free time to do everything, I used another nonprofit as the beneficiary. So if you donated to Ironcology in the past, it always went to the Cancer Foundation at the hospital I used to work for. And new this year, I actually took the steps and did the whole arduous task of creating it as its own standalone 501c3. And we've actually gotten some really nice support. And, I put on my own race, which was in June, called the Survive the Night. It's an overnight relay, but I actually have proceeds and I have a bank account with money in it for once. So it's very nice because I actually am now spending money. So literally just 2 days ago, I cut a check where the money that Ironcology raises now is purely being made available to patients who are in need when they come to get cancer care. So at least in the state of Kentucky, I have people who will be driving 3 and 4 hours to come in and get their cancer treatments. And there are some available places for them to stay for free, but frequently it's a backlog or they can't get in. So primarily I'm shifting money for hotel rooms, gas money, meal cards, and I work through the social workers. And what that allows me to do is do like a voucher system where I know exactly who the money's going to and what increments and when they're getting it. And that way the money is not being picked up by like the hospital administration, and I know exactly what's happening with it. So it was nice. 2 days ago, I cut a decent check where I bought 40 nights a block of 40 nights of hotel rooms that basically are just vouchers now given to the social worker. So if we have a patient who comes here and says, I need to come for treatment, but I don't have a place to stay, well, I actually can cover the cost of their hotel room through Ironcology. So that's a little tiny achievement, but hopefully we'll have a lot more of those in the future.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, from a standpoint of finishing Ironman and doing this type of work on yourself, I mean, this is rewarding on different levels.
Yeah, it's rewarding, but then also, I'm a cancer doctor that's my profession. Specifically, I do radiation treatments. This may be a weird way of looking at it, but I also feel in a way it's my responsibility to make sure that the patients that I'm treating and giving them a cancer treatment, that they're actually able to receive that treatment. And, you wouldn't believe how many people end up seeing me. And if you don't ask them or you don't find out, they're driving 3 or 4 hours each direction just to try to get here to do the treatments that I'm giving them. And this is something that actually helps tremendously in terms of their quality of life and their pocket. And really just making it a more convenient process for them.
Wow. So, I mean, you've been in this business for a while now and been a doctor for a while. How long was it until you actually learned to ask, hey, how far of a drive did you make today?
I think some of that is just being a person and talking to your patients about stuff other than the exact reason they're there, but also just trying to find out. So I usually try to make it a point to find out something about each patient. There's I don't remember where I heard this from or where I got it, but, when I read something years ago or somebody explained it to me that if you look at people that we consider like geniuses who have like photographic memories, most of it actually has to do with not that they're memorizing some rote concept, but rather that they are associating an idea with something. So like if you meet somebody and you're trying to remember their name, if you just try to memorize this person's name, it doesn't stick. But if you remember, the guy from California who rides bikes, that association is going to help you remember their name. So when I see patients, usually I'll ask them, what's the nature of your work? Where are you from? Tell me something about yourself. And usually you get some little tidbits along the way and you will start remembering people so much easier. And I have so many patients that I can't use their cancer to help remind me who they are, because if I say, the patient with breast cancer, you know how many people I've treated with breast cancer? But so I usually try to remember some type of a detail about that. And usually I can remember a lot more about these patients. So in terms of when did I start asking that, I don't know, probably towards the relative beginning, because it's my way of trying to remember who everyone is and differentiate them.
Wow. And you're up in Lexington, Kentucky?
Yes.
Wow. Well, to kind of wrap up here, I've already asked you what races are on your bucket list, what your definition of a perfect race is. So it's time to wrap up here. How can people follow you?
Probably the easiest way is Facebook. Jonathan Feddock. Instagram is at Ironcology. That's IRONCO. I'm sorry, IRONCOLOGY. And then my website is ironcology.org.
Nice. Well, Jonathan, it's been great having you on here, and I've enjoyed hearing about this, and I look forward to hearing from both you and Shannon about Kona, and I wish you all the best. And to wrap up, I'd just like to ask you, in order of importance for you, what do you feel like is more important? Mental grit, nutrition, or endurance?
Well, I guess I'm going to say mental grit, nutrition, and then endurance. You got to have the mental grit to tolerate the pain, to know that you got to eat. And if you don't have either of those, you're not going to finish the race.
Wow. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I've enjoyed it, and I look forward to following y'all at Kona.
All right, thank you. I'll talk to you soon, Terry.
All right, have a good one. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.